What's up everybody, Commander Sanctum here, and today we have a brand new deck tech using Wolverine Best There Is from the Marvel Secret Lair. Wolverine is a 2/2 mutant berserker hero for 1 red-green that doubles all damage he deals, gets a +1/+1 counter at the end of each end step if he dealt damage to a creature, and can regenerate for 1 and a green. There's a few different ways to build Wolverine. You could go straight Voltron, equipment or auras, fight spells. For this, we're going to key in on his first ability to end the game, and use the theme of the second ability to do so. That is, we're going to be using +1/+1 counter theme to make Wolverine very large before using spells that allow him to deal damage directly to opponents, which will be doubled thanks to his Unrivaled Lethality. With that, let's get into the card highlights. To start out our +1/+1 counter package, we have a few cards that will increase the number of counters we can put on Wolverine whenever he gets one. Branching Evolution and Innkeeper's Talon both double the number of counters added, while Ozolith the Shattered Spire simply adds an additional one. However, Ozolith has the added benefit of also allowing us to add a counter at sorcery speed, letting us get an additional 2 counters on him on our turn for a low cost of 2 mana. Innkeeper's Talon is probably the best effect that does this, as it not only doubles counters at the final stage, but also lets us add one at combat, and provides a bit of protection for Wolverine once we've done so. Next up, we have a few cards that can provide our Wolverine with consistent counters each turn. Forgotten Ancient is one of the quintessential +1/+1 counter cards that can quickly ramp our Wolverine up, especially if playing against someone with a Spellslinger deck. Helena and Elena Partners is both a great counter generator for Wolverine and an alternate counter target, as the more counters that they get, the more they'll be able to pass out during combat. With also having First Strike and Reach, Helena and Elena can make for a very powerful blocker if you get them big enough. Rite of Passage can add counters to a creature in the opposite manner of Wolverine's ability, but will still be good to include for when Wolverine needs to attack and inevitably gets blocked. Not to mention, it works very well with fight spells, which is a good alternative strategy for Wolverine. Speaking of fight spells, why not include some since they work so well with Wolverine's counter ability? Since we're not going full bore on the fight theme, I opted to include fight and punch spells that also give the target creature a +1/+1 counter on resolution. Ancient Animus is the actual fight spell version of these cards, whereas Domri's Ambush and Signature Slam are the punch versions. Signature Slam is especially nice since the damage to your opponent's creature is done by all your modified creatures, not just the one who gets the counter. Meaning, if you have any other creatures out that happen to have counters or maybe some equipment on them, they'll also deal damage to the target, letting you take down something bigger than just Wolverine alone could handle. I also wanted to call out 2 spells that can double the number of counters on a creature, Invigorating Surge and Fangs of Colonia. These are both great includes in this deck, as they can allow you to pump up Wolverine extremely quickly to go for the kill. Fangs of Colonia can even be overloaded to double the counters on all creatures you control, potentially giving a huge increase to your entire army. While Invigorating Surge only affects one creature, the fact that it is instant speed can completely RKO an opponent out of nowhere, especially when attacking with Wolverine. Alongside +1/+1 counters, giving Wolverine temporary boosts of power can be an effective way to get him big enough to one-shot an opponent. There are a number of Gruul-based spells that will give a creature a temporary increase in power from combat, letting you unleash the one-shot spell in the second main phase. Xenagos God of Revels is likely the best known card that does this sort of increase, whereas Ashroot Animus does basically the same thing if it itself attacks. Sometimes the Animus can even be better, since it gives the creature trample, letting you more easily hit an opponent in combat. Unnatural Growth also does the same type of effect, but increases all your creature's power and toughness, not just a single one. Pair this with Xenagos or the Animist, and you'll have an absolutely monstrous Wolverine that turn. Finally, we get to the major payoff of making Wolverine huge, the player punch spells. These are spells that deal damage to a player equal to a creature's power. Chandra's Ignition is probably the most well-known and certainly the best effect that does this, as it affects all opponents and all other creatures. With Wolverine's double damage effect, this card very easily turns into a board wipe that not only leaves Wolverine alive, but also deals a ton of damage to all of your opponents. Gravitic Punch and Soulsfire are more typical punch spells, dealing only damage to an opponent or any target in Soulsfire case. Even though Gravitic Punch is specific to a player, it does have Jumpstart, letting you use it twice and potentially letting you one-shot 2 opponents at once. For more reusable effects, we have Burning Anger, Fiend Lash, and Sure Strike Trident, which will let us punch our opponents more consistently with Wolverine. Now, Burning Anger and especially Sure Strike Trident are a bit on the costly side of the effect, but to be honest, there aren't that many opponent punch effects we have available. Especially for Gruul colors, I thought that there'd be a lot more, but pretty much all of the rest of the cards are creature or planeswalker specific. Due to that, we do have to sacrifice some cost efficiency to make the theme work, but it's not too bad of a downside. This doesn't include Fiendlash, by the way, which is an absolute bomb when paired with Wolverine and is probably one of the best cards in this deck. I can pretty much guarantee you that if you can get Fiendlash out and attached to Wolverine, you'll be able to end the game very quickly. Even though Wolverine doubles his own damage, why not increase it even more? To do this, we can use a number of additional damage doubling effects. Twin Flame Tyrant is a great creature that has this effect, doubling any damage done to an opponent or a creature they control. Fiery Emancipation does this as well, but triples it instead of doubling, making it a very effective way to deal a ton of damage at once. While the main goal will be to one-shot an opponent with a punch spell, we need a good backup plan for cases where we don't actually draw those cards. A great alternate strategy will be to simply attack with Wolverine and kill our opponents with commander damage. To do this effectively, we'll need to give him Evasion so he can actually connect with the opponent. Brotherhood Regalia is a great way to do this, giving the equipped creature unblockable while also giving them protection from targeted removal with Ward. Canopy Cover takes this protection a step further by giving the enchanted creature effectively hexproof. While the Evasion is worse than straight up unblockable, pseudo-flying is still a great way to get through to most opponents. Duskshell Crawler fits with the overall counter theme of the deck, giving a creature a +1/+1 counter when it enters, and will give Wolverine trample while doing so, making him much harder to block effectively. We also have a few lands that will help us connect with Wolverine. Kessig Wolf Run is a bomb in most Gruul decks, and is especially great in this deck since we care about pumping Wolverine as much as possible, even if only temporary. But even in cases where we don't need to pump his power, paying 2 mana to give him trample is a great way to let him connect with our opponents. Rogue's Passage is a bit more expensive from an activation cost perspective, but makes him unblockable, which is always a great way to close out a game. There are also a few utility cards that work well with the deck. The Ozolith is a great card for any counter deck, and this is no exception. For the times when Wolverine will inevitably be killed, being able to transfer all his counters to the Ozolith to get them back on him when replayed is a great way to save a lot of time and effort. Kedis Emberclaw Familiar works very well with the Wolverine combat damage strategy, since being able to deal damage to all of your opponents is a great way to end the game quickly. Not only that, but Kedis states that the commander that deals the combat damage is what deals the damage to the other opponents, meaning that the damage will be doubled to those opponents due to Wolverine's ability. Here's an example Decklist utilizing all the previously mentioned cards. Additional cards include more +1/+1 counter sources, an effective Wolverine board wipe card in Waltz of Rage, and card draw spells that synergize with having a large creature in Rishkar's Expertise and Return of the Wildspeaker. You'd probably expect a deck based on the X-Men character Wolverine to be very punchy, and this one is no exception. In typical Gruul fashion, the best defense is a good offense, and Wolverine has some extremely capable offensive ability. Wolverine has such a low mana cost and a great damage ability in Unrivaled Lethality that you'll be able to easily put immense pressure on your opponents starting very early in the game. Combining this with +1/+1 counters to make Wolverine bigger means you'll likely be able to take out an opponent with commander damage very early on if you want to do so. Even without attacking, making Wolverine big enough to one-shot an opponent out of nowhere with a punch spell is a very effective strategy that will likely take your opponent completely off guard. It may require some politicking to do so, since seeing a Wolverine across the table, especially one getting bigger and bigger, is scary enough on its own, but will be effective if done right. The one downside to this strategy is just the lack of great opponent punch spells, since we really only have access to 6 cards that do this, 2 of which are rather expensive. Likewise, just like with any strategy that focuses on a single creature, the deck can be more easily nullified by opponents who simply remove Wolverine as soon as he's dropped on the battlefield. Thankfully, Wolverine does have some built-in protection from destruction with his regenerate ability, but this doesn't do much against exiling or bouncing effects, making it less effective in a lot of cases. Still, if you're able to get Wolverine out and keep him out, I can pretty much guarantee that you'll be able to quickly end the game with either commander damage or punching damage. If that sounds like a type of strategy you love, give Wolverine a shot. You won't regret it. I hope you enjoyed watching this deck tech on Wolverine Best There Is. The full deck list outlined in this video can be found at the Archidect link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Magic content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.